Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining me for another math lesson with Mr. Woodford. Today, what I would like to cover is actually lesson 5.7 of the Math 7 curriculum, which talks about constants of tables and equations. So do me a favor, if you're joining me online, especially if you're a student in my class, look on Google Classroom and begin to find the actual activity, objective 5.7, and look along with me as I show you exactly how to calculate the constant of graphs, tables, and determine if it's a proportional relationship. All right, this is our lesson right here, and we will calculate the unit rate of the constant of tables and graphs and determine if they are proportional. Okay, in the process, we'll discuss the similarities between proportional tables and graphs. To start off with, as usual in all my classes, what I would like you to do is take this moment to pause the video if you need to and begin to work on the bell work. I want you to calculate the unit rate of this tortoise. It says that this giant tortoise, he travels 10.5 inches in 3 seconds. So what is the tortoise's unit rate? And after you calculate the unit rate, I would like for you to fill in this table um, regarding the distance for 1 second, 2 seconds, 4 seconds, and 5 seconds. And then after you do that, determine if there is a constant in this table by doing y divided by x. All right. Uh, After you've done the bell work, please take a moment to look at the reflection questions and see if you could explain how you would calculate the distance of the tortoise. If it was said that he traveled 12 seconds, is there a shortcut to be able to find his actual distance? And then how would you describe the rate of speed at which this tortoise is actually traveling? All right. So take a minute. I would give you about 4 to 5 minutes right now to begin to work on this bell work as well as the reflection part of this worksheet, just to be able to calculate the unit rate, fill in the table, as well as calculate the constant. All right. I'm hoping that you took that time to pause the video, or take now if you need to pause the video. I am not going to go over every piece of this bell work to give you the answers, but I will let you know what the unit rate is, and that should be able to help you calculate the constant or determine what the constant is, because as I mentioned before, the constant and the unit rate are very similar, and it should allow you to fill in this table as well as going to answer those reflection questions. So I'm going to give you the answer for A, and the answer for A here is simple. It's the unit rate is 3.5 inches per second. Okay, and I got that by doing 10.5 divided by 3, and that's what gave me 3.5 inches per second. And remember, I talked to you guys about rate and the difference between rate and ratio, and the rate has to include these words, has to include these unit that follows after you say the answer is 3.5. Okay, whereas if you were to tell me what the constant is, you could just tell me the constant is 3.5. All right, so please fill in the rest of this table, answer them to the best of your ability, answer reflection questions to the best of your ability. And what I would like us to focus on right now is actually the modeling on the very next page. This modeling activity that's here, I'm going to do 2 modeling activities for you. One is going to be determine if this table is proportional, and modeling B, I'm going to determine if this graph is proportional. All right. So take a second with me. Let's look at each one. And I know right off the back, you're probably going to say, okay, well, they're both proportional. That's the unit title. However, I'm going to once again teach you how to calculate the constant, teach you how to calculate the unit rate, and determine if indeed these are proportional. And that's what I would like you to do today. So Anthony earns money by dog sitting. Based on the table, is the relationship between the amount Anthony earns and the number of days a proportional relationship. So he's dog sitting, and in the table it shows you that after 1 day he's earned $16. After 2 days, 32, 348, 464, and 580. So we can see that there is this consistent pattern, if you want to say, where he's earning money. But the question is there a constant? Right? The way we calculate constant, ladies and gentlemen, is the constant equation, which constant is represented by the letter K, is y divided by x. Y divided by x. And I mentioned in times past that when we look at a table, we have to associate the top value of that table as an x value and the bottom value as a y. Now, if this table was vertical, we would associate the first column as x and the second column as y. But in this case, we're going to say the first row is x and the second row is y. Now, we need to calculate if there's a constant, and we're going to do it with every single value here, y divided by x. So I'm going to do 16 divided by 1. That's going to give me 16. 32 divided by 2. Does this also give me 16? It does. And I'm going to do that with every single one. 48 divided by 3. Does that give me 16? It does. 64 divided by 4. Does that give me 16? Yes, it does. And finally, 80 divided by 5. Does this give me 16? And the answer is yes, it does. So is there a constant? Yes, there is. What is the constant? 16. Okay. Since there's a constant, ladies and gentlemen, and this is where you make sure you understand that. All right, I'm going to put this right here. Okay. If there's a constant, all right, if there's a constant, then you can automatically say that this table, this graph is proportional. Okay. Once again, if there's a constant, if when you did y divided by x, every single one of these gave you 16, it gave you the same exact number. That's how you can determine if indeed this is a proportional relationship. Okay. Let's look at modeling B, where I'll go over the data in here. Now, this one here is talking about the growth of a fir tree. Based on the graph is the relationship between the time of year and diameter a proportional relationship. Okay. So now we're looking at a fir tree here. We're looking at a fir tree and we're going to determine if this data here is proportional. Okay. It is a straight line. It makes a nice straight line, and that's great. But proportional may not only mean it creates a straight line. So let's look at what's going on between the diameter and the time of year of this particular tree. We see when no year has passed by, it was already a diameter of about 10, right? And you're probably like, well, how did you get that, Sorbo? How do you know that that number is 10? The first thing I would like you guys to do is always get into the habit of analyzing your graph. Analyzing your graph. So I'm noticing here that it's 8 here and there's only one number in between, or one dash in between. That means that has to be 4. It means it's going by 4s. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, 40. So since this dot is between 8 and 12, I know it's got to be a number between 8 and 12, which the number between 8 and 12 is 10. Okay, so it starts off at 10. Let's not use this first dot here, but let's identify the coordinates for the rest of these dots, because we need to calculate the constant. The formula for the constant, once again, is y divided by x. So in the end, we have to figure out what are the x's and what are the y's. The x is always this horizontal line, whereas the y is always this vertical line. When I look at my first point here, I go to identify what the actual coordinate is. And I go over on the x, 10, and then I go up to say, okay, what is this y value? And that's between 12 and 16, which means that's got to be 14. Okay, so that's my first point, 10, 14. I'm going to identify the rest of these 3 points as well. This has got to be 20, comma, it's right here between 16 and 20, which means it's 18. This point here is 30, that's a 3, 30, comma, between 26 and 24. I'm sorry, between 20 and 24, that's a 20. Between 20 and 24, that's 22. And finally, to identify this last point here is 50, comma, 30. Okay, these are all my points. Now, what's the reason you identify these points is because you have to determine if this is proportional. And the way we determine if it's proportional is we're going to do our y's divided by our x's. Okay, remember, in every coordinate, the first value is x and the second value is your y. So I'm going to do every single one to determine if this is proportional and if there is a constant, because I got to figure out if there's a constant here, really. So I'm going to do 14 divided by 10. right? 14 divided by 10, I believe that gives me 1.4. Gives me 1.4. Then I'm going to do 18 divided by 20. Now 18 divided by 20 is 0.9, I believe. It's 0.9. Now, once you get here and you notice that you have two different values, that's immediately telling you that there is no constant. That's immediately telling you that there's no constant. Yes, I can keep going and I could do 22 divided by 30 and I would get 0.73 repeated. I could do 30 divided by 50 and that would give me 0.6. But I noticed right away that there wasn't a constant between the first 2 points. And because there's no constant between the first 2 points, that immediately tells me my answer that I need to figure out. So the question is, once again, is there a constant? I'm going to say no. There isn't a constant. And if you want to write no, there isn't a constant. All right, feel free to do that. No, there isn't a constant. All right. And now what we can begin to do is we can answer the question that is the follow-up question, which is asking us. It's asking us here, let me just scroll it down, proportional or non-proportional. Because there's no constant, I can associate this with being non-proportional, okay? That is the job that you have to do for the rest of this worksheet. You have to answer the remaining 6, I believe, questions and determine if they're a constant or not between the tables and the graphs, and determine if it's proportional or non-proportional. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, X and Y are a part of every coordinate. Every coordinate has an X value and a Y value. You have to calculate the constant by doing Y divided by X, right? And also keep in mind at one value, that's your unit rate. All right, so try to calculate these constants and determine if they're proportional, non-proportional. If you do have any questions, feel free to pause the video, rewind it, watch it a couple times, or send me a message on our Google Classroom page asking for more details, or you can always join me for extra help on Fridays. All right, thank you guys so much for joining and watching the video. Have a wonderful day. I look forward to talking to you more later. Have a great day. Bye-bye.